I still remember the call that pulled me back into the darkness. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in late October when my phone rang. I'd been on administrative leave for 4 months after the Kensington case, a case that still haunted me every night. My therapist said I needed time. Time to forget. But how do you forget finding a child buried in a flower bed? The caller ID flashed. Captain Harris. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the green icon. I should have let it go to voicemail. I wish I had. Detective Calloway, Harris said, skipping the pleasantries. We've got a situation in Ashford County. Something weird. Something you'd want to see. I closed my eyes. I'm not cleared. You're cleared now, he interrupted. And we need you. That's all it took. A few hours later, I was driving through sheets of rain toward a sleepy little town called Marlow Hill. A place with 1 diner, 2 traffic lights, and the kind of silence that feels too quiet. The address was 17 Ashwood Lane. A beautiful Victorian home, painted pale blue with white shutters. Picture perfect, except for the dozen squad cars and the yellow tape slicing across the porch. A uniformed officer met me at the gate. You're Calloway? Thank God. This one's off. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and something else, something metallic. The living room looked untouched. Cozy even. But then I saw the blood. It trailed from the kitchen to the basement door, thick, dark, and deliberate. Whoever did this didn't panic. They wanted it to be found. Down in the basement, the air turned cold. There were dozens of photographs pinned to the walls. All of them black and white. All of them of the same woman, mid-30s, dark hair, kind eyes. Her face was always the same. But the backgrounds changed. A grocery store. A parking lot. A carnival. Her house. She had no idea someone had been following her for years. In the center of the room, there was an old television playing static, and sitting in front of it, tied to a wooden chair, was a man. Dead. His eyes were sewn shut. Pinned to his chest was a note. She should have stayed quiet. I didn't know who she was. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. I stood in that cold basement, the hum of the static pressing against my ears like a threat. The man in the chair had no ID on him. His fingers were bruised, likely from trying to escape the restraints. But it was the stitching over his eyes that got to me. That kind of precision takes time, and rage. The note, "She should have stayed quiet," was handwritten. Neat cursive, female, most likely. But maybe that's what they wanted me to think. I turned off the television. The silence that followed was louder than the static. Back upstairs, forensics was dusting for prints. I asked about the homeowners. "House is registered to a Helen Granger," an officer replied, flipping through his notepad. "Single. 36. Local kindergarten teacher. Neighbors say she's sweet. Kept to herself. But here's the thing, no one's seen her in 3 days." "Any family?" I asked. "Non-local. We're still checking." I walked through the house again. Everything was in place, no signs of struggle. Just that trail of blood. The photos in the basement. And the corpse with sealed eyes. Then I found the second note. It was folded inside a copy of Little Women on the bookshelf, page marked with a pressed daisy. This one said, "He watched her too long. So I watched him." Whoever this was, they weren't just a killer. They were a storyteller. And they wanted me to read every word. Back at the station, I ran a background check on Helen Granger. Clean record. She'd been teaching for almost a decade. But then I found something odd. 6 months ago, she filed a restraining order. The name on the file? David Mercer. Age 42. Divorced. Worked as a security technician. I pulled up his photo and felt my stomach twist. It was the man in the basement. David Mercer. The man with his eyes sewn shut. He'd been watching Helen Granger for over a year, according to the restraining order. Showed up at her school. Sent her letters. Left gifts at her door. The case had gone to court, but the judge dismissed it for lack of evidence. Classic. Now he was dead, in her basement. I couldn't tell if that was justice or just the beginning of something worse. We searched Helen's home for any signs of where she might have gone. Her clothes were still there. Her phone was on the nightstand, battery dead. Her car was missing. No sign of forced entry. I reviewed the photos from the basement again. That's when I noticed something. In the lower right corner of every photo, a small symbol. A triangle with a line through it. Almost like a signature. It wasn't just stalking. It was documented obsession. And maybe not just from Mercer. Maybe someone else had been watching them both. Back at the precinct, I got a hit. A gas station camera on Route 7 caught Helen's car 2 days ago. She wasn't driving. It was a woman. Dark hoodie. Sunglasses. Tall. Slender. But definitely not Helen. A second woman. Driving Helen's car. Disappearing into the woods. Who was she? Then a call came in. A local hiker had found something strange near Hollow Creek, about 20 miles from Marlow Hill. I drove up immediately. Through the rain and trees, we reached a clearing. There, carved into a tree, was the same triangle symbol from the photographs. And below it, a single Polaroid, clipped to the bark with a rusted pin. It showed Helen, tied to a chair, eyes wide open, alive. The photo was fresh. The edges weren't even damp from the rain. Someone had been here recently, hours ago, maybe minutes. Helen was alive. But the look in her eyes, that wasn't just fear. It was recognition. Like she knew who was behind the camera. We cordoned off the area and called in for dogs, drones, the works. But the forest was dense, the rain relentless. The trail ended at the tree. No tire marks. No footprints. Just mud and silence. Whoever left that Polaroid wanted us to find it, but not her. Not yet. Back at the precinct, I started digging into that strange triangle symbol. It wasn't random. It looked familiar, but I couldn't place it, until a junior officer named Sims came running in. "You need to see this," he said, breathless. He pulled up an old missing persons report from 2010. A girl named Lena Vaughn. Disappeared at age 17. Case was never solved. But in her bedroom? On her wall? Drawn over and over again in red ink? That same triangle. I flipped through the file. Lena was last seen leaving a late-night tutoring session. Witnesses claimed she was arguing with a woman in a dark hoodie before she vanished. The case went cold. But something in my gut twisted. I had to know more. I called her mother. "Detective Calloway," she said, voice frail. "I gave up hope a long time ago." "I understand, ma'am. But I need to ask, did Lena ever know a woman named Helen Granger?" There was a pause. Then, she was her babysitter when Lena was little. Before we moved towns. That was it. That was the connection. Lena knew Helen. And now Helen was missing. The kidnapper wasn't just anyone. She was Lena Vaughn, the missing girl. Only now, she wasn't a victim. She was the one pulling the strings. I stared at Lena Vaughn's file. She'd been gone 15 years. Everyone assumed she was dead. But if she was alive, and behind all this, then she wasn't just hiding. She was hunting. I asked our tech unit to reanalyze the gas station footage, enhance the woman's face. It wasn't perfect, but the bone structure matched Lena's teenage photos. The nose, the chin, just older, harder, colder. But it still didn't make sense. Why now? Why Helen? And why kill David Mercer? Unless he wasn't her first. I pulled cold cases from nearby counties. Anything that fit the same pattern: restrained victims, sewn eyes, symbolic markings. 3 came up. 2018. A man found in an abandoned church in Fairdale. Eyes stitched, hands bound, triangle carved into the floor. 2020. A woman in a motel outside Brenton Falls. Same pattern. Same triangle. No suspects. 2023. An artist found dead in his studio, staged in front of a canvas, a painting of a woman with no eyes. All unsolved. All within driving distance. All the same killer. Lena Vaughn hadn't just come back. She'd been active for years. This was a pattern. A ritual. Each victim had ties to missing persons cases from decades ago, teenagers. Girls. Girls like Lena. And Helen? Maybe she wasn't just the next victim. Maybe she was the last. That night, I went back to Helen's house. Something was nagging at me, a detail I missed. I searched her bedroom, her drawers, her closet. Behind a loose panel in the floor, I found a locked metal box. Inside were newspaper clippings, letters, and a photo. The photo was old. Faded. It showed young Helen, holding hands with a little girl. On the back, scribbled in blue ink, "Me and Lena. Summer 2008. But the chilling part? Lena wasn't smiling. She was staring straight into the camera. And behind her, barely visible in the shadows, was a third figure. Another girl. One I didn't recognize. The photograph haunted me. Helen and Lena stood front and center, but that third girl, hidden in the background, wasn't posing. She wasn't supposed to be in the photo. Her face was blurry, almost ghost-like, but her eyes, they locked with mine through the print. Watching. Waiting. I scanned the image, enhancing it with our lab's tools. The girl was maybe 10 or 11. Short, dark hair. And something else, she was wearing a charm necklace. A small silver triangle. That symbol again. I flipped through the letters I'd found in the box. Most were written in a child's handwriting, rambling thoughts, drawings, journal entries. But one letter stood out. No greeting. No date. Just this. She said we were chosen? That the silence makes us stronger. That pain is the price for staying awake. I never wanted to wake up. It was signed with a single initial. M. Lena. Helen. And M. 3 girls. One summer. Something happened. Something terrible. I needed to know who M was. Cross-referencing the address from the photo's location, I dug into property records. Helen's family had rented a lake house that summer, 2008, in a remote part of the county. And the neighbors? The Matthews family? A daughter named Maren Matthews. Disappeared in 2010. Presumed runaway. No body. No trace. My blood ran cold. What if Maren didn't run away? What if she never left that lake? I called in a dive team. The lake was deep, old, filled with silt and secrets. Hours passed. Then came the shout. A duffel bag. Inside bones. Child-sized. Long decayed. Dental records would confirm it, but I already knew. Maren Matthews had never left that summer. And Helen and Lena? They knew. Whatever happened at that lake changed them both. One became a recluse. The other became a killer. And the silence between them? It was starting to scream. The discovery of Maren's remains made headlines. But for me, it was more than a cold case solved. It was the origin. I knew Lena would hear about it. Maybe she already had. If she'd been watching all these years, she'd see this as a warning, or a challenge. Helen and Lena were the last ones who saw Maren alive. But only Lena had gone off the rails. So what did Helen do? I returned to Helen's home, this time with a warrant to seize everything. I needed context clues, anything that could explain what happened that summer. In Helen's attic, tucked beneath insulation, I found a wooden box, sealed with wax. Inside was a diary. Helen's. The entry started off mundane, schoolboys' music. But halfway through, the tone changed. July 11th, 2008. Maren said she saw something in the woods. She said it told her a secret. Lena believes her. I don't know what to think. July 13th, 2008. We went into the woods. I wish we hadn't. Marin screamed. She fell. I didn't push her. I swear I didn't. But she hit her head. There was blood. Too much blood. July 14th, 2008. Lena said we had to make a pact. To stay silent. To bury her. To forget. I didn't want to. But she said if I told, she'd make sure they thought it was me. So we buried her. Deep in the lake. And we never spoke of it again. It wasn't murder, not at first. It was guilt. It was fear. And it had festered for over a decade. But guilt breaks people in different ways. Helen hid. Lena transformed. And now, she was back to make the silence louder than ever. That night, another package arrived at the station. No return address. Inside was a cassette tape. On it, a woman's voice, shaking, quiet. It was Helen. If you're hearing this, she found me. She said the past can't stay buried. She said the lake isn't done with us. And she's right. It's happening again. Then a pause. And finally, Detective Calloway, if you want to stop her, meet me where it all began. Meet me where it all began. That meant only one place, the lake house. The one Helen's family rented in the summer of 2008. I didn't wait for backup. I knew by the time I filled out the forms, whatever was going to happen would already be over. The road there was long and overgrown, the path swallowed by branches and memory. The house still stood, barely. It had been abandoned for years, swallowed by moss and time. I stepped inside with my flashlight drawn. Dust hung in the air like ash. Floorboards creaked like they remembered everything. The living room was untouched. The same ugly floral couch. The same fireplace. And in the center of the room, a chair. Tied to it, barely conscious, was Helen. Her mouth was taped. Her wrists bound. Eyes swollen from crying. But alive. I rushed to her, cutting the tape, whispering, "You're safe now." She shook her head violently, trying to speak, panic in her eyes. Too late. The front door slammed shut. And from the shadows, a voice. "You're early, Detective." I turned slowly. There she was. Lena Vaughn. Older. Sharper. Wearing the same silver triangle charm. Her eyes were hollow, like someone had emptied her soul and left her body running on rage alone. She held a knife, but didn't raise it. "I didn't want to hurt Helen," she said. "I wanted her to remember." "Remember what?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "That she let me bury Marin. That she made me lie. That she slept in peace while I drowned in guilt." "She was a child," I said. "So was I." She snapped. "But I didn't get to grow up. I became the lie. The monster." She took a step forward. "And now I'm setting her free." In one motion, she lifted the knife. But it wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at herself. Time slowed. Lena's hand trembled, the blade inches from her chest. Her eyes locked onto mine, not with hatred, but with something worse. Acceptance. She wasn't here to escape. She was here to end it. I moved on instinct, crossing the room in 2 strides and grabbing her wrist just as the blade pressed into her skin. "No!" I shouted. "You don't get to vanish. Not after this. Not after all of them." She struggled, but her strength was gone. Her rage, her fire, it had burned itself out long before I arrived. She collapsed to her knees, the knife clattering to the floor between us. Behind me, Helen sobbed. It was the first sound she'd made since I found her. I turned to her, unsure if it was relief or grief or both. Lena whispered. "She didn't save me." I knelt beside her. "You were both kids. Scared. You buried the truth to survive. But you didn't survive, Lena. You just stayed lost." She looked at me with hollow eyes. "I was never supposed to come back." I radioed for backup, and within minutes the house filled with voices, lights, movement. Paramedics checked Helen. Officers took Lena into custody. She didn't resist. As they led her away, she turned back to Helen one last time and said softly, "I waited for you to say something. You never did." Helen didn't answer. Couldn't. That night, I sat in my car outside the station, listening to Lena's tape again. The first one she'd sent weeks ago. I finally understood something I'd missed. In the background, barely audible, was a sound I'd mistaken for static. It wasn't. It was whispering, repeating one phrase over and over. 3 went in. 2 came out. 1 still sleeps. That whisper haunted me. 3 went in. 2 came out. 1 still sleeps. It didn't add up. We found Marin's body. Helen survived. Lena came back. That's 3. So who was the one still sleeping? I reviewed every photo, every document, every word Lena had left behind. Then it hit me. There was always a pattern. A message beneath the surface. In her diary, Helen wrote that Marin saw something in the woods. Something that changed her. What if Marin wasn't the first? What if the darkness didn't start with her? Back at the precinct, I ordered full forensics on the triangle symbol, where it came from, what it meant. One of our analysts returned hours later, pale-faced. "You're not going to like this," he said. The symbol wasn't just random. It was traced to a defunct therapy camp for troubled girls, shut down in the early 2000s after multiple reports of abuse. The camp's name? Silent Pines. And guess where it was located? Right beside that lake. Helen's parents used to bring her there for summer counseling. That's how she met Lena and Marin. They weren't friends by chance. They were assigned to each other. All 3 girls were part of a therapeutic experiment, intended to help reprogram trauma through silence, ritual, and emotional transference. It wasn't therapy. It was manipulation. And the counselor who led it? Dr. Evelyn Rowe. Reported missing in 2009. Never found. Her last known address? A small cottage on the other side of the lake. Not far from where we found the Polaroid. Suddenly, the whispers made sense. Lena wasn't the puppet master. She was a puppet. And the one pulling the strings? She'd never left the woods. She still slept beneath them. Waiting. The forest was still. Too still. I stood outside the rotted remains of Dr. Evelyn Rowe's cottage, the air thick with decay and memories. Vines choked the structure, but the walls still stood, defiant, like they refused to forget. Inside, the floor creaked beneath my boots. Dust danced in the flashlight beam. Shelves lined with old books. Ritualistic diagrams. Hand-drawn charts labeled with names. Helen. Lena. Marin. And others I didn't recognize. In the back room, I found a chair, wooden, old, splintered. Straps still bolted to the arms. A recorder sat beside it. Dead batteries but intact. I took it back to the station. Our techs revived it. The last recording was dated August 2nd, 2008. Dr. Rowe's voice crackled to life. Session 17. Lena is progressing faster than expected. She's begun referring to the silence as a presence. Calls it the one who watches. Claims she can hear it in her dreams. I believe this is a breakthrough. Helen remains resistant. She avoids the exercises. I've separated her from Marin for now. A pause. Then, quieter. There was an incident in the woods. Marin went missing for several hours. When she returned, she was different. She refused to speak. She carved a symbol into her own arm. Said she saw me. I must reassess our methods. I shut it off. Dr. Rowe had gone too far. Whatever she'd awakened in those girls, whatever trauma she buried, had bloomed into something monstrous. Helen buried the guilt. Lena became the vessel. But Marin? She saw the truth. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. A cabin in the woods. And tied to a tree outside it was Lena. A triangle carved into her cheek. Beneath it, scrawled in blood. Bring Helen. Or she dies next. I drove into the woods with Helen in the passenger seat. She hadn't spoken since seeing the photo of Lena tied to that tree. Her hands trembled. Her eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead, like she knew exactly where we were going. Like she'd been there before. The forest swallowed us whole. No signal. No backup. Just the sound of tires on wet dirt and the rhythmic thump of my heart. We found the cabin at dawn. A collapsed ruin, half devoured by moss and roots. And outside it, Lena. Barely conscious. Tied to the same tree where Marin once carved that cursed symbol. I approached slowly, gun drawn. Lena! Can you hear me? She raised her head, one eye swollen shut. She's still here, she whispered. She never left. Helen stepped forward. Who? I asked. Lena looked past me, toward Helen. Tell him. Helen closed her eyes. And then, finally, she spoke. When Marin fell, she didn't die right away. She was breathing. I wanted to run for help. But Dr. Rowe was already there. She told us this was part of it. That we had to finish what had started. That Marin was a sacrifice. I felt the air turn colder. Helen looked at me. So I did nothing. I watched. I let her slip beneath the water. And I let Lena take the blame. She turned to Lena now. I'm sorry. I should have spoken up. Years ago. Lena was crying. But she nodded. That's when we heard it. A voice, not human. A whisper stretched thin and hollow. One still sleeps. From the shadows of the cabin, a shape emerged. Not a person. Not an animal. Just darkness given form. And in its chest, glowing faintly, was the same triangle symbol. Helen stepped forward. She turned to me. It won't stop until the truth is given freely. I shouted. Don't. But it was too late. She knelt before the figure and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then it touched her forehead. Helen collapsed. Gone in seconds. The thing vanished. And just like that. Silence. Lena survived. But Helen paid the price. Epilogue. Lena was committed to a psychiatric facility. She speaks now and then. Mostly in whispers. Helen's body was never found. Dr. Rowe was officially declared dead. But I don't believe it. Not really. As for me? I still hear the whispers at night. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that symbol. Burned into the dark. The triangle. The silence. The one who watches. And I know this story? It's not over. Not yet.